The June 2023 version 1.5 PiFire Update brings many new notable updates and features to the platform, including completely overhauled probe system, new recipe mode, new dashboards, control panel everywhere, and much more. Let's check out some of the features in detail.
After you've finished installing version 1.5.0 from scratch, or if you've updated from a previous version and rebooted, you should be presented with the configuration wizard in the web user interface. The reason for this is that the probe subsystem has changed and will need to be reconfigured for your particular hardware setup. So we'll go through that really quickly and show you what that looks like. As far as the platform, not much has changed here. However, you do want to make sure you select the correct board. If you have the standard board or the PWM board, make sure you select the right one. I have the standard board, so I'm going to go with that. I have active high relays, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. Alright, on to the probe input section. Now for here, first off, you want to make sure you're setting your global temperature units to whatever you prefer. I've got mine set to Fahrenheit because I'm in the US, but if you want to set it to Celsius, it's absolutely an option here, no problem. For the probe input devices, you can select what kind of devices that you want to input or have probes associated with them. This is where you can start to expand and do some customization. We're going to list out basically just the default configuration, which is the ADS 1115 device. You can actually go in here and edit some of the specifics if you want to. For example, if you have multiple ADS 1115s in the system, you may want to assign different ITC bus addresses to each of those, and then of course unique device names to each of those as well. This is going to be used in the port selection down below, or the probe selection down below, so that's very important to make sure you have a recognizable name that you can use. Now, if you want to, you can also add different devices as well. So there's a list of devices. You may not be able to see it in the video, but things like adding a virtual probe are now possible by adding specific probes that you want to average and then giving it a name, and then it will add to your devices there. On probe configuration, very similar here. We've got the default setup here with just the 2 food probes and 1 grill probe. You'll notice that the grill probe is named primary, and that's what's used to actually control the grill, and it is assigned to ADC 0 on this ADS 1115 device. If you have anything different here, then you may want to configure this a little bit differently by going in and editing using this little button here. You can change the port mapping if you want to. You can change this to a food probe. You can change the profile if you want to right here, and you can enable disable. Now this feature isn't set up yet in the web UI, but in the future this may be something that gets implemented. So in this particular example, I wanted to add a probe, so I'm going to go ahead and add the probe number 3, because I have WeberBox's 3 probe or 3 food probe board. I'm going to assign it to ADC 3 on the ADS 1115. This is a food probe, so I have selected food probe, but you can select it as a primary, or you can select it in auxiliary. What auxiliary will do is allow you to still sort of save the output or data in the history file, but it won't be displayed in the user interface. It won't be displayed in the graphs, and it can be used as a virtual probe input if you want to. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to leave this as heater meter for now, and then I will say enabled and save. So you'll see that it gets added here to the list. and then I can go next to continue on to the next section. No changes with the selection of the display and input, so I'm going to keep going. This is my configuration, and I don't have a hopper sensor installed on this particular system, so I'm just going to keep going. Alright, that should be about all. I'm going to go ahead and click confirm and install. So just to make sure I see the selected modules there, all looks good. So I will click confirm and install, and then wait for it to install, and it should reboot the server, restart the server, and come right back up. And there we have it. PiFire has come back up and is ready to go. Right away you might notice that the dashboard has gotten a little bit of a facelift and looks a little bit different than the previous versions. This version has been refreshed and contains some new graphics for the gauges. It also organizes things into cards a little bit more neater, and has some information down here about your pellet level. Quick buttons to access your pellet manager and refresh status. Down at the bottom, similar to previous versions, we have the control panel. More on that later. And then simply just have the one button here to go to status and history graphs. Things like the timer have actually moved up into the main toolbar at the top of the screen next to the main menu. And you can click on this to show the timer or to hide the timer. If you want to launch a timer, first you need to set the settings. So let's just say I want to set a timer for 1 minute, and then click start, and that should start up the timer at the top. Now if it's too distracting for you, you can always hide that away, and so it's always there. But you can always bring it back if you want to, pause, start again, etc. Also new, we have some more information down in the bottom of each of these cards for the different probes in the grill. You can set notifications, or you can go into settings. And to show you how this all works, let me go ahead and start the grill up, and you can see what it looks like when it gets started. So I have this all sort of connected to a test rig, so these temperatures aren't necessarily correct, but this can help sort of illustrate what it's going to look like when it's running. But let's just say I'm done with startup mode. I want to go into hold mode, so I go ahead and set a hold temperature. Let's say I want to do 220. And you'll notice now we've actually got the hold temperature down here, and it's got its little icon indicating this is the target temperature, and what that temperature is. If you click on this, it brings up this set point temperature again, and you can change it. So you can say, oh, never mind, I want this to be 265, and hit set. So also down here at the bottom, you can, on the control panel, also do the same thing. Maybe I want to go back to 255. So we'll go ahead and set that. And you'll see that the change is reflected here in the grill card as well. Now, say I want to get a notification when I hit a specific temperature. So let's go to 132, and I'll set that notification. And now you can see it's highlighted that we have 132 Fahrenheit as the temperature that we want to get notified when we hit that temperature. So if I adjust the temperature up a little bit, as soon as we hit that, go beyond that temperature, the notification gets sent, and then this indicator goes away. And the same thing is possible for each of the food probes. So you go ahead and click on the notification bell there, select a particular temperature that you want to be notified at and set that. And right away you can see that our set temperature for this particular food probe is 123 degrees Fahrenheit, and so that should trigger as soon as we get to 123. So let me crank up the temperature a little bit, and you'll see this notification go away as soon as we hit 123. And there it is. Alright, so that's it. Outside of that, not much to share as far as the dashboard is concerned, but I hope you like the changes. I hope you like the new design, and I hope you get a lot of good use out of it. One thing that I found to be super helpful about this release is that I'd really like to have this control panel exist on all the different pages that I use while I am doing a cook. So for example, if I go to the history and status page, you'll see there's no control panel down here right now, or if I go to the pellet manager, there's no control panel down here. I'd really like to see a control panel down there at the bottom. So what I can do is I go to settings and go down to the theme, and I can select show control panel on most pages and save. And what this is going to do is, you can see right away, the control panel shows up right at the bottom of this page. And now if I go to the history page, there it is again. You can see the control panel. It persists across most pages within PiFire. So even if I go to events, it's down there. So if I want to control my grill at a glance, or see where it's at a glance, I can. It's very easy to use. Really, really helpful feature in this version. In this version of PiFire, there's been some updates to the status and history page. So if I fire up the grill, you'll notice that we've got a few more things going on here in this particular version. So one is, you'll see different colors at the top of the legend you're seeing. We have the third probe that I have installed in the system showing up as well, which is pretty cool. And since this is a test unit, none of the actual temperatures are really going to fluctuate that much unless I go and manually change them. So I can kind of manually change the grill temperature, for example, and you'll start to see that. And just like normal, we've got all the normal options here. You can click on the legend, you can get rid of particular probe values, we can get rid of their target indicators, we can turn on and off annotations if you want to. You can change the length of history to display if you want to by using the slider here. I can turn on and off the streaming. I can export to CSV all of the data. I can look at the metrics, and then also if I have some cook files, I can take a look at those right down here and open those up. And just like in previous versions you may be familiar with, you can do things like rename the labels. So if I wanted to rename something to I don't know, let's do brisket, you can do that and save it off. Let's just say brisket, and we'll save that off as well. You can kind of navigate around this chart. You can also look at the different information about the metrics for the different modes, and then add comments, add some pictures if you want to. You can have lots of fun with this. If you go back here, you'll notice that the name of this file changed, and you can again do things that you would normally do. You can download this, or you can delete those as well.
Last but not least, we have recipe mode, which is a brand new mode to most of you in this particular release. However, secretly, recipe mode has been buried in the code for a couple of releases now. However, it is now exposed through the UI and through the display on this latest version. So you can get there by going up to your menu and selecting recipes. Here you're going to be on the welcome page. You can select between load recipe or new recipe. For demonstration purposes, I'll show you what it looks like to load a recipe. Here you can see in our recipe book, we've got a couple of recipes, and you've got some options for each. So you can run the recipe program, you can view the recipe program by clicking on this eye icon, you can edit the recipe by clicking on the little pencil, you can download the recipe file by clicking on this blue button. Cloud upload is not enabled yet, but it's sometime in the future, or you can delete the recipe. You can also see here there's usually a quick thumbnail and name and file name for you to select recipes from. Let's take a look at this first recipe here. So if we view the recipe, you'll see that we have a nice thumbnail or image splash for the recipe. We have some metadata here about the recipe. So we have things like the author, the rating, prep time, cook time, difficulty, the number of food probes that need to be used for the recipe. And by the way, this is important for when you run the programs or the recipe programs. It's going to rely upon the number of probes, and if you don't have the number of probes configured on your system, it may not be able to run. Next, you'll see a box for the description. The next box is for the ingredients. Just kind of go through here and you can see what ingredients you need and the quantities, and you can add pictures here if you want to, so that it's a little bit easier. Maybe you have a specific type of barbecue sauce or maybe type of seasoning that you want to have on your ribs, so you want to add a picture of that. You can definitely do that. The next section is the instructions. This is the general human readable instructions, sort of step by step what you need to do for this recipe. Again, you have descriptions of the recipe itself, or the steps, and then you've got the ingredients used in that step, and then the program step that is associated with this. You can also add some pictures here if you want to. It's nice and helpful for the users. For the program steps, this is where the magic happens. So this is the program that will actually control your grill. So it's going to step through these steps here and follow these instructions for your cook or for your recipe. So step one is always going to be the startup mode. So we'll transition to the next step after we start up. Then in step one, we'll be in smoke mode. Here we will only transition to the next step after one of the following trigger points. So one is either 180 minutes elapses, that's 3 hours, or the user presses continue on the display or the web UI. And then we'll also send a notification at the end of this, or when we are triggered, that it's time to wrap your ribs and return to the grill. Step two, we're going to go into hold mode, and we're going to hold at 250 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, here the triggers are 120 minutes will elapse, or the user presses continue on the display of the web UI. And again, we're going to send a notification, and then the user will have to come in and press continue. On step three, we will also hold at 350 degrees. This is the finishing step. This is only finished after 30 minutes, or somebody presses next on the display or on the web UI. And then step four is a hold mode at 165. This is a keep warm step. So basically, if you let the grill go a little bit longer, then it's just going to transition to hold for 165 degrees Fahrenheit, basically forever until the user comes in and gets the ribs off the grill. Then we go into shutdown mode. Okay, so this is what it kind of looks like as far as a recipe. I'll give you an example of how we might actually go build a recipe. So let's go ahead and try that. So for this one, we'll just quickly go through. We'll do something like pulled pork. I'll put myself as the author. I'm going to save after each step here. I'm going to just say prep time is 10 minutes. We're just going to put random values in here. 120 minutes, easy. Food probes is 2. This is the description field, etc. And you don't really have to add anything for ingredients or instructions. So what we're going to do, I'm going to skip over those for now, but we'll do something really, really simple. We'll start with step 1. We'll go into hold mode, hold at a particular temperature, and we'll also set a food probe temperature, and we'll say, hey, if your food reaches 200 degrees Fahrenheit, that's one of the triggers. You might want to pause here and wait for the user to input to the next step, and then send a notification that my meat is done, it's time to shut down. So I'll go ahead and hit save, and that's it. We've got a simple recipe finished. So basically it's going to start up, it's going to go to step 1, it's going to go into hold mode, and then it's going to wait until we hit 200 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it's going to wait for us to hit next, and then it's going to transition into shutdown mode. So with that said, we can go ahead and run this recipe. So let's go ahead and do that. And right away you can tell that the control panel has changed, and now we have a new recipe mode control panel that shows us what step number we're on currently. Currently we're on step 0, which is the startup mode, and then once that completes, it's going to move on to step 1. So let's just wait a moment and wait for it to transition to step 1. We'll speed this section up. And as you can see, we've transitioned into step 1, and right now we are in hold mode, and we are going to be paused until we hit 200 degrees on probe 1. So let me go ahead and adjust probe 1 and see if we can get to 200 degrees. See what happens. Excellent. Okay, now that we've hit 200 degrees, a notification was sent, and you'll notice that we have the next button down here, prompting us to click the button to move to the next step. So we'll go ahead and do that. And now you can see that we are in step 2, which is the shutdown mode. So it's indicating the mode here is shutdown, and if I want to, I can prematurely end this step by clicking on the stop button, and now we're in stop mode. So a really basic example of a recipe and how recipe mode works. In the future I may do a deeper dive into this new feature to show you what you can really do.